When I say the word open source, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? For some people, they think about an alternative to closed source. For other people, it might be a safer version of closed source. But for many people, they think about the word free when the term open source is brought up. And for the most part, this is completely true. The most popular example would be OBS. It's an open source software that allows people to screen record their videos. Twitch streamers use this, and a lot of videos that have like a screen recording use OBS. And for anyone using it, you will never have to pay a penny for the software. However, in the term open source company is the word company. And as many of us know, a company needs to make money. It has employees, it has running costs, and for it to work, it needs to generate some form of money. And I used to think that open source company made their money by being owned by a closed source company. So a great example of this would be React. React is a library framework, whatever the hell you want to call it. And it's owned by Facebook, which is a private, or it's a public company, but it's a private company that generates money outside of that actual product. So React doesn't actually need to generate money because it's being funded by Facebook. However, this is not completely true because there's a lot of companies, including the company that I work at, that are owned by themselves. They're not owned by some closed source company and are solely making money on their own by being an open source company. And so there are two main ways that an open source company makes money. The first, and where 99% of the money is being generated from, is something called a hosted service. For the most part, successful open source companies are usually self-hosted versions of closed source companies. So the company I work at is Cal.com. We market ourselves as an open source version of a scheduling software. So if you are a developer and you want to self-host your own Cal.com or scheduling app, you can just install the repository on your own computer and use it as a self-hosted version of a scheduling app. And that right there is the main reason why open source companies, for the most part, exist. Since the software is, open, then the company cannot make money from the open software. So a lot of companies just look to hosted versions and try to directly compete with closed source alternatives. Let's say you're an open source video conferencing app that's like, let's say you're marketing yourself as an open source version of Zoom. You could just offer the same features to enterprises and people as Zoom does, while also having the open source there as a way to impress developers. And in that case, the open source company is making money by people using their features from a non-developer standpoint. And this is where like 90% of a lot of these open source companies make their money. However, there is a second, and in my opinion, a way more interesting way that open source companies make money. And it is a paid API/component that allows the developers or companies using the code to build more complicated and personal features. What I mean by this is when you clone a repository from GitHub, the app itself can be very complicated to use. And so what companies could do is create a customizable version of their own software so that developers and enterprises alike can then install that, pay the price for it, and then use it to build their apps. If we go back to the example of a open source version of Zoom, this could mean the company creates components for like video conferencing where all you have to do is install, connect to an API, pay for that API key, and then use it in your own app, but it's highly customizable. Versus where in the free version, you could just install the repository and it just looks the exact same as the other app, and it's very hard to, make your own app out of that. I think this one was just a lot more interesting, though it probably makes a smaller chunk of the two. It is very interesting. And the last thing I wanted to talk about, and this isn't really a monetization strategy, but rather a belief that a lot of people have about open source software. And it is the fear and idea that someone will just steal your open source code, make it closed sourced, and then beat you out because there's this closed source and you can't copy from them, because when they copied from you, they just took everything from you, but you can't copy from them. And all I have to say about this is that when you're going into open source and when you plan to open source your software, you do have to expect that someone will steal your code. But there are ways you can protect your code to make sure that something like this does not happen. And the main way to do that is include some form of licensing on your software. So if you're on GitHub at all, you probably know about the MIT license. This license just allows other people to use your software for free without charge. Now, obviously, it has a lot more, but that's the basic gist of it. But there are other licenses like AGPL v3, and I said that without having to repeat it 100 times. All this licenses is that it forces whoever's cloning that repository to make that software public for other people. So they can't just take the code and then close source it. And so yeah, that is basically how open source companies make money. Since I work at an open source startup, I think this is very important, and I hope that we never have to deal with any of the licensing issues. And so if you made it to the end of this video, I want you to leave 2 kiss emojis below, just so I know that you made it to the end of this video. I will respond, I promise. I just want to know that you made it to the end of the video. Also, join the Discord. There's over 1,000 developers in there, so it's pretty cool community, and it's just super nice. Happy coding, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.